The Washington Commanders achieved something in Week 9 Sunday here at MetLife that hasn't been done in 50 years, and that's just the start of the good news following the Washington Commanders win over the New York Giants. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, everybody, to this live episode of Locked On Commanders, coming to you from the press box of MetLife Stadium. Look, y'all, it's cold out there, all right? And yes, the wind can provide some warmth, but it can't provide that much warmth, guys. I'm doing this up here in the press box, old school style, like we used to do back before we were on the field, going back to last season and the year before. Of course, I'm your host of Locked On Commanders, David Harrison, covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. You can also find me helping out with WUSA9.com's local DC coverage of the team this season. I'm here with you every single day, Monday through Friday, everydayers. Thank you for coming through every single day as well. Even if you're not in every day, and especially if you're new to the program, I appreciate you coming through for today's episode. Locked On Commanders is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and it's your daily podcast covering your favorite team. If you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode, in which we're talking about the win that the Washington Commanders achieved over the New York Giants, NFC East Division foe, 2-0 against the New York Giants this season. We're going to dive into our 3 stars of the game like we do every game. We're going to talk about why the Washington Commanders were perfect where it mattered the most, and we're going to talk about how winning is just the new way it is for Washington. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers, you place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com today to get started. The Washington Commanders, when it's all said and done, come out with a 27-22 win. So not only do they win straight up, they also cover the spread that was 3.5 points when we made our bets. If you made your bets with us, and of course, if you do, please gamble responsibly. But the bottom line is 5-point win. The Washington Commanders advanced to 7-2 over the season. And if you're doing the math, and I know some of my insiders are because I'm getting text messages about it, they have now cleared these 6.5 over-under win projection that FanDuel had for them before the season. And you go back to before the season, we talked about what they had to do in order to clear that 6.5 win total, and why, when you broke it down as far as how they had to perform against last year's playoff teams, how they had to perform against teams that had winning records last year and didn't make it to the playoffs, and how they had to do against teams that had losing records last year, it really didn't seem like that high of a mountain to climb. And here we are now, November 3rd, and the Washington Commanders have not only climbed that mountain, they have reached the peak, and now they've got their eyes on the next summit, which of course would be the NFC East Division title. Now we'll get there as we continue these conversations. Let's focus on Week 9 before we get all the way to the postseason. And my first take from this latest victory over the New York Giants is that what we saw on the field from the Washington Commanders on Sunday afternoon was improved grit. That's what I'm calling this game, improved grit. So you saw a lot of grit, right? This is a very knockout, kind of just drag it out, kind of very physical game. The New York Giants really came out, and we expected them to try to run the ball a good amount, especially getting Tyrone Tracy to clear concussion protocol as quickly as they did. I honestly had a little bit of concern for the young man and his health, just kind of being amazed at how quickly he was able to come back from concussion protocol. But on top of that, just understanding the physicality that the New York Giants were going to want to play with, getting him back and how that could help their team potentially. And then you look at the Washington Commanders run defense, it hasn't exactly been stellar all throughout the season. So you knew that this kind of take it to the mat type of contest was going to be coming against the New York Giants this weekend. So it wasn't really a surprise to see the New York Giants try to come out here and do that. But not only did the Washington Commanders rise up to that challenge, offensively coming out and kind of hitting their own blows. Now, fortunately for the Washington Commanders, even with Brian Robinson Jr. out, not needing to lean on the run game as much as the New York Giants certainly needed to, Jaden Daniels able to do some things with his arm, with his leg himself. Cliff Kingsbury really kind of calling plays to accentuate his player strengths, which of course has been something he's been doing all season. But when you even get beyond kind of the obvious layers of this, right? Brandon Coleman played 22 snaps. The rookie left tackle played 22 snaps in the Week 2 win over the New York Giants there in Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland. Today, he played an entire game. Not only did he play an entire game with Cornelius Lucas out with the ankle injury, but he did it while he himself is coming back from a concussion, and he did it against the league's leading pass rusher and is part of a unit that today gave up no sacks against Jaden Daniels. And yes, some of that is because Jaden was smarter, Jaden was faster, either getting out of there or getting the ball out of there than he was the first time they played. Sure, but understand this is the same quarterback, so it's not like this is a different quarterback who's playing better than the statuesque one they had in week 2. It's the entirety of the unit, but Brandon Coleman growing with that unit as well. So I wanted to give Brandon Coleman some flowers as we get into this as well. The last time we saw this Washington Commanders team, talking about grit, playing without Brian Robinson Jr., the main catalyst of their running game. A great stat was shared by Sam Fortier of the Washington Post on Twitter, if you follow him there. When Brian Robinson Jr. was officially ruled out of this game, he dropped the stat. With Brian Robinson Jr., this team is first in rush play success. So again, successful plays, first down, 60% of the yards to gain, second down, 40% of the yards to gain, third down, all the yards to gain, fourth down, obviously, all the yards to gain. So this team was first in success rate, successful run plays when Brian Robinson Jr. was on the field. When he was not on the field, however, that ranking dropped into the 20s. That's how much of a difference this team was seeing with Brian Robinson not on the field. The last time he wasn't on the field for an entire game against the Baltimore Ravens, Washington Commanders ran for 52 yards in that game. Now, Baltimore Ravens rush defense certainly better than the Giants, and the Washington Commanders came out throwing the ball a lot more against the Ravens than they did this week against the Giants, but still 149 rushing yards as a group without Brian Robinson really gives you the confidence that if you need to go forth without him for a period of time or for a game here and there, of course you don't want to. You'd love to have B-Rob on the field, but in case you have to, gives you confidence that you can go ahead and do that. The New York Giants, look, again, talking about setting the tone, right? The New York Giants, 142 rushing yards in the first half. Whoa. I mean, that was, I knew this team was going to run the ball at Tyrone Tracy. I knew this Commanders defense was susceptible against the run, but I did not expect, I don't think anybody expected 142 rushing yards given up. Now, the Giants ran the ball a really good amount. At one point in time, they had 21 carries in the first half. So, again, there's a lot of carries going. It's not like it's 8 carries, 142 yards. But in the second half, they don't come out. They only get 22 yards in the second half. 164 total net rushing yards for the game for the New York Giants. So the second half, much, much different. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. But when you look at the individual stats, Tyrone Tracy Jr., the outstanding rookie running back, had 10 carries for 50 yards in the first half, finished the game with 16 carries for 66 yards total. So that total net rushing yard production by the New York Giants, yes, some of it was game flow. Some of it was because they were forced to kind of get into a little bit more of a pass mode in the second half. But you also look at Tyrone Tracy, who goes from averaging 5 yards a carry to having 16 yards on his next 6 carries. That's a much lower average for Tyrone Tracy Jr. So the run defense also stepping it up a little bit. Talked to rookie defensive lineman Johnny Newton in the locker room after the game, and he talked to me about adjusting at halftime, correcting the small mistakes that led to big runs in the first half, and how they were also drawing energy off of the offense, taking a 21-7 lead into halftime. The defense drew energy off of that and kind of said, look, we need to come out here and do our part to make sure we don't blow this lead. And they certainly stepped up in the second half. Talking about week 2 to week 9 differences, Terry McLaurin in that week 2 matchup, many more catches, right? 6 catches in week 2, only 22 yards, no touchdowns in that first game against the Giants this season. And this one, 4 fewer catches, only 2 catches, 3 fewer yards, only 19 yards, but 2 touchdowns. And look, no matter what happens in sports, points are king, touchdowns are king. So if you're scoring touchdowns, I remember there was a game where like Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 2 catches, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns, something crazy like that. It doesn't matter. If you're getting those points, that's exactly what you need. And that's what Terry McLaurin produced today. Leading receiver Noah Brown, 5 catches, 60 yards on the day. I want to give a shout out as well to tight end Ben Sinnott. 1 catch for 12 yards in the stat box. So not a lot of stats to really lean on and brag about if you're a Washington Commanders fan. But man, did this rookie do so many more things in this game. Came out, lined up as a fullback, doing things obviously as a tight end in the blocking game, contributing in special teams. Talked to tight ends coach David Rye, and he told me, he said, look, man, Ben Sinnott is a guy who on a lot of other NFL teams would be getting super burnt, right? Would be getting a lot of reps, a lot of targets, a lot of opportunities. This dude is so talented, but he just so happens to be in a very veteran and a very established tight end room with Zach Ertz, with John Bates ahead of him. This is a situation where Ben Sinnott isn't necessarily not getting the looks or not getting the burn because he doesn't deserve it, but he's not doing it because he's the young guy in a room of guys that all deserve it, but certainly he's still out there giving his best, doing what he can when he can. So wanted to go ahead and make sure we shine some light on Ben Sinnott as well. But all of that combined, right? All of those things, all of those efforts, all of those just attitudes about this team shows how far they've come from week 2 in a win still over this New York Giants team to a bigger win. Granted, not a massive win, not a blowout win, right? But certainly a bigger win, a more efficient win against the New York Giants in Week 9 in MetLife Stadium, where we all know, man, this has not been the friendliest area to the Washington Commanders. But we get the sweep. We witnessed the sweep. Washington Commanders sweep the New York Jets or New York Giants. I was actually looking for a broom before I came in here. I was going to try to hold it up, but we don't have. I couldn't find one. And Jane Daniels, first rookie quarterback to sweep the New York Giants in 50 years. That's a long time for no rookie quarterbacks to sweep the New York Giants. But that's exactly what we witnessed here in Week 9. A little bit more on how it all went down coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this live episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. That's Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Again, that's Robinhood.com/gold to get more information on that. Today's live post-game Victory Monday episode of Locked On Commanders is also brought to you by PrizePicks. And with PrizePicks, you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You pick 2 to 6 players with as little as 4. You get them correct if they're the right type of combination of picks. You could win up to 100 times your money. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today, get a $50 bonus instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So cook up your hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So you go to PrizePicks. If you think this player is going to get more than their projected stat line or less than their projected stat line, you build your team of more thans, less thans. Doesn't have to be all or one or the other. You mix and match it and do all those good things. And your first $5 lineup gets you a $50 bonus instantly with PrizePicks. Run your game. Continuing with our Victory Monday episode of Locked On Commanders, Washington Commanders winners on Sunday afternoon here in Week 9, 27-22 over the New York Giants. Washington Commanders advancing to 7-2, the New York Giants falling to 2-7. Had the pleasure of doing a crossover Thursday with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants at the end of last week, previewing this matchup. Had the pleasure of catching up with her in the press box before the game. Had the pleasure, it's always a pleasure to talk to Pat, but she was obviously not a whole lot of happy with the New York Giants dropping yet another game, but still a pleasure to see Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. And of course, if you want to get even more out of Locked On Commanders, you can do so by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders today, and you can get all of the amazingly crafted texts. I had one that said, "All that for a field goal. Woof." That was one of the amazing texts that you're getting from me. Look, they're not all gold, okay, but they're all personal and they're all to you directly from me. It allows you to get more out of your Locked On Commanders experience. Just go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders. I promise you get more than just that from being an insider. Try it out for free for the first 2 weeks. If you like it, stick around. If you don't, I appreciate you giving it a chance either way. Looking at the 3 things that we outlined in the crossover Thursday episode with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants, as we do every week, there were 3 things that we outlined that the Washington Commanders must do in order to win. And I try to frame these in a way where I tell you that if the Washington Commanders do just these 3 things, as simple as they sound and as difficult as they are to actually achieve, that I can all but guarantee you a Washington Commanders victory. And if they don't win, we're going to be able to come back to these 3 things, and we're going to be able to point out at least 1 or 2 of them, usually 2 of them, that the team did not accomplish and why it led to the loss. So what I like to do when these things go well, right, and we get wins from the Washington Commanders to talk about, is look at the 3 things that they did right, how many of them that they got right to lead to that victory. And today, happy to report, Washington Commanders are A+ students, 100%, 3 for 3 on the 3 things they must do. Those 3 things were counter the Giants' pass rush, find the end zone, contain explosive passes, specifically in this game. Countering this Giants pass rush, again, one of the, if not the best pass rush in the National Football League. Brian Burns, certainly one of the league's best pass rushers. Dexter Lawrence, one of the league's best pass rushers, especially from the interior of the defensive line. Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, certainly some guys that need to be accounted for. That's the word he's trying to use as he speaks for a living. Azeez Ojulari, funny enough, a guy that a lot of people seem to think might get traded from the New York Giants, and I'm kind of sitting here going, Giants, I know you don't like to trade in the division, but you already lost 2 games to these guys. You're not going to see him again this year. Yeah, you might see him next year. You're going to see him next year, and yeah, maybe he comes back to beat you then. But that's a future problem. Let's go ahead and let Azeez Ojulari go for a 6th-round pick, maybe to the Washington Commanders. I don't know. Keep an eye on all those things, of course, as we will over the next 48 hours as the trade deadline looms. But look, in week 2, Jane Daniels was sacked 5 times against the New York Giants. Now, I did tell you guys that I kind of credited 3 of them as him running into them. There was the one, if you remember, where he was wrapped up. I don't remember which Giant it was, had him wrapped up, but wrapped up in the backfield. Jane was able to escape, scrambled around to his left, kept his eyes downfield, looked like he might throw the ball, took off, ran out of bounds at like 1 yard loss depth. So technically, it's a sack. It was a really great play, but it's also a sack. Jane Daniels has grown a lot since then as a quarterback, not just as a passer, but also as a runner and as smart. Runner saw him slide, saw him go down. There was actually a really awkward moment where he went down, where he kind of like gave himself up and then saw a lane open up and kind of was like, oh no, I don't want to give myself up. But he was already kind of in that motion, so had to give himself up. Chip blocking. We talked a lot about chip blocking this week. I asked Dan Quinn about chip blocking, Cliff Kingsbury, Andrew Wiley, Luke McCaffrey, Brandon Coleman. I asked pretty much anybody I could that had something to do with chip blocking about the importance of chip blocking. And it wasn't all chip blocks, right? But certainly a lot of help given to this offensive line in this scheme, not just against great pass rushers, but as part of just kind of what they do. And it really helps the offensive line. And I think it's one of the reasons we've seen a much better offensive line than a lot of us worried we might see in the beginning of this season. And Jane Daniels, no sacks in this game, not sacked 1 time against this New York Giants team that I think we said was what 3rd best or maybe 1st best sacks per pass attempt coming into the week. So it's amazing. And yes, some of it was quick passes. Some of it was certainly leaning on the run game. Some of it was just the straight up pass block, chip blocking, things like that. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is no sacks against Jane Daniels in this game. That's exactly what you want to hear if you are a Commanders fan, I would like to believe. Number 2, find the end zone. 7 field goals the last time these 2 teams faced off. 6 trips in the red zone for the Washington Commanders. 0 touchdowns, certainly contributing to the New York Giants' incredibly high rating of red zone defense and the Washington Commanders' incredibly low rating of red zone defense. We even talked about the Washington Commanders out here and getting aggressive, trying to score from the high red zone, which, again, everybody has kind of their own different definitions of the red zone, but I call the high red zone from the 20-yard line to the 40-yard line. And we saw this team try to take some stabs at getting the ball into the end zone from the high red zone. We saw Terry McLaurin 18-yard touchdown pass, which is obviously in the red zone, but again, not getting down into the nitty-gritty part of the red zone to try to get those scoring drives done. Instead, taking advantage a little bit of your explosive ability and your ability to get the ball into scoring range. Washington was 51.43% success rate in the red zone, 24th in the National Football League today alone, 60% conversion rate inside the red zone. That would be good. If 60% was their total red zone rate, that would rank top 10 in the National Football League. So that is exactly the type of red zone production you want to be seeing from your team. The New York Giants came in 5th best in the red zone defense, 42.11% allowed, so nearly a 20% increase in red zone scoring here in this game for the Washington Commanders. So obviously put a green check next to that one, certainly achieved that. And then containing explosives. Look, the New York Giants, right? 2nd lowest scoring production this season, but 11th in time of possession. And the New York Giants certainly did that, held time of possession by 4 minutes. But you look at their scoring production, right? And look, they had some explosive plays here. The New York Giants finished the game with 7 explosives. So not a terrible day from an explosive standpoint. But you look at their scoring drives, their first touchdown drive took 9 minutes and 43 seconds, 16 plays to get that touchdown. Their next scoring drive, a field goal, took 15 plays, 8 minutes, 37 seconds. More on that drive in a minute. Their next touchdown drive, 6 minutes, 8 seconds. to get that touchdown. Their last touchdown, 58 seconds, 4 plays. That's the one you wanted to avoid. That's the one we talked about avoiding before the game. But overall, the Washington Commanders made the New York Giants earn every single point they got, and they end up coming out with more points than their opponent. They end up getting the win. And because of it, we get to identify 3 stars. We get to be happy about it. We get to talk about our series of the game, not our play of the game. All coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's live Victory Monday episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours and hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, you can go study history. You can study economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution certainly means something this time of year. Did you study these things in school? Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. Do you remember these things that you studied in school? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Even if you do a little bit, everybody could use a refresher from time to time. Speaking of time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they haven't changed the basic need for fundamental truth about the world and our place in it. Our sponsors, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free courses online, including American Foreign Policy, the Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and the History of Classical Music. So go to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll today. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. hillsdale.edu/locked-on. Today's Victory Monday live episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you're watching this Washington Commanders game and you go, it's 21-7 at halftime, I think the Washington Commanders look pretty good. I didn't put money on this game beforehand, but I want to do it right now. You can go to FanDuel. You can see if they have odds available for you to take the Washington Commanders straight up on the money line to win the game. Sometimes if the leads get too big, they take away your opportunity to do that. Just going to let you know that now. But if it's available, you can then check the play-by-plays. You can check the stats, the developments going on with the exact same game in the exact same place that you can place that bet. So go to FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And we are wrapping up our celebration of Victory Monday. Of course, we've got a Victory Tuesday episode coming up too, right around the corner. So make sure you come back for that. But we're going to talk about our play of the day, and we're going to talk about our 3 stars of the game. And oh man, this was really hard to come up with. So we're gonna talk about this one a little bit. We don't have a play of the day today. The 18-yard touchdown to Terry McLaurin certainly could be a big one. The 2-yard or 1 yard, the slant, the early slant touchdown to Terry McLaurin could certainly be one. There was a 1 yard slant to Terry McLaurin could certainly be one. The Austin Eckler touchdown, right? I mean, any of these red zone touchdowns obviously could be a big play. But I'm going to go with the stand or a drive, a series of the game, okay? Giants' first drive of the second half. Commanders leading 21-7 coming out of halftime. But they got the ball to start the second half, and it promptly went 3 and out. So you don't like doing that. So for the Washington Commanders defense to get on the field, it's important that you protect that 2-score lead. Well, the Giants end up driving 61 yards on 15 plays. They eat up 8 minutes and 37 seconds. All they get, a field goal. Told you about the text I sent, right? All that for a field goal. Woof. Well, that was the series. That was the drive. It makes it 21-10, which is good, but it's still a 2-score game, which is good for the Commanders, not for the Giants. They forced the Giants into 2 official 4th down tries. The Giants actually tried 3. Now, the third 4th down try was actually a touchdown, but it was negated by an offensive pass interference penalty, which I was confused because I saw the offensive pass interference right away. The flag went out. The official signaled pass interference, but then signaled defense. And I was like, hold up. There's no defensive pass interference, but when they called it, it was offensive pass interference. So you love that. So, you know, that forced the field goal try. Now, after that, you get complimentary football from the Washington Commanders. The Commanders' offense comes back on the field. They get a field goal of themselves to extend the lead back out to 14 or to 11 points, to 14 points, sorry. And after 3 possessions in the second half, 2 by the Commanders, 1 by the Giants, the lead is the exact same, which you would love it to be more, but at worst case scenario, we want it to be exact same. And there are only 33 seconds left in the 4th quarter. Now, the New York Giants, I don't want to sit here and say like the New York Giants after that they rolled over. You'd love to say that, but they, to their credit, if you know, for whatever it's worth, they fought to the end of the game. The New York Giants, the team never gave up. Now the fans certainly started to give up pretty quick, but the team itself never stopped fighting in this game. But that series right there, 3 possessions in the third quarter total for both sides. The lead doesn't shrink by the time you hit the fourth quarter. That was incredibly important. So for me, I gave that the series of the game, not a play of the game, but the series of the game. Certainly a lot of opportunities to go up and pick some other ones as well. I see we got an Eagles fan in the comments. It's kind of weird. You should be watching a game. 3 stars for this game. Again, really hard. Star. I'm actually going to go backwards on this one. So star. Usually we go star 3, star 2, star 1. That's how I do it in hockey. That's how I like to do it here. But because this is a difficult decision, I'm going to go star 1 is Terry McLaurin. Look, I know Terry McLaurin. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of pushback on this, but some people might say like, okay, yeah, Terry had the 2 touchdowns. Those only had 2 catches. There were other guys on the offense, Austin Eckler, Chris Rodriguez, Noah Brown led the team in receiving. Jay Daniels obviously, made some really critical plays down the stretch. Olamide Zaccheaus had the big play at the end of the game that basically, not officially, but basically sealed the deal. But Terry McLaurin, but look, at the end of the day, if you score 2 goals, right, to use the hockey analogy, if you score 2 goals, you're getting your star up there. And Terry McLaurin scored 2 goals for the Washington Commanders. Not only were they goals, they were red zone goals for the Washington Commanders. So Terry McLaurin, star number 1. Star number 2, I'm going to go Dante Fowler. Dante Fowler, early on in the game, had a sack that forced a fumble from Daniel Jones, almost recovered by Fedarian Mathis, eventually was recovered by Bobby Wagner. And Dante Fowler Jr. is a guy that, like when we talk about this edge rush trade, right, we're talking about like outside linebackers, defensive ends, all that stuff. Dante Fowler is one of those guys that if you bring in as a Darius Smith or you bring in Azeez Ojulari, his reps are one of the guys that you're possibly talking about impacting. So for him to come out here and kind of make this impact, like if we get to Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and there's no new edge rushers on this team via trade, these types of performances, 2 sacks, 1 strip sack of Daniel Jones that flips the field. And remember that drive, the New York Giants were rolling. They were steamrolling this defense. So Dante Fowler comes up and makes a big play, gets the ball back for his unit, for his team. And these are going to be the games where, when you look at me and say, David, explain to us why this is okay. These are the types of games that I'm going to go back and point to and say, here's why it can be okay. So Dante Fowler gets our star number 2. Star number 3, I'm going to go Chris Rodriguez Jr. I'm going to go running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. because the bottom line is this is the last time that Chris Rodriguez Jr. can be called up from the practice squad. So he's either got to be added to the active roster, which means somebody else has got to get released. I know a lot of my insiders are wanting to talk about that. So we're going to talk about that on our insider exclusive Zoom after this episode. So again, if you want to be in on that conversation, check it out for 2 weeks for free. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. You'll get that invite here in about half an hour. I've got to do a spot with ABC7 Insider. So after I do that spot with Natalie Spala of ABC7, we'll be doing the Zoom as I leave the stadium. Anyway, but this is his 3rd game being active for this team. First 2 games, never got a touch. This game, I looked at it and said, look, this Commanders team needs a power presence in the run game. Austin Eckler certainly can run through the tackles. He's really shifty. He's got more power than I think people give him credit for. Jeremy McNichols obviously has a little bit more power, I think, than Austin Eckler, but, not as consistent of a career as Austin Eckler. But Chris Rodriguez Jr., when we've seen him in action, we've seen him get opportunities in games, he's delivered more times than not. So, and you go back actually to the Jets game in MetLife just last season, kind of his big game of his career so far. And he's showed up, man. The team's leading rusher for the Washington Commanders. He finishes the game. I'm looking at receiving stats for some reason. He finishes the game with 11 carries, 52 yards, averages 4.7 yards per carry. Darn near got in the end zone. There are some people in the press box saying, like, if they would have reviewed that last run he had, he was in the end zone, would have got a touchdown. I really wanted to get him for him. I really wanted them to get it for him. But I knew after that, the game melting away, Dan Quinn is not the coach to go out there and say, well, I just wanted to get Chris a touchdown, so we ran up the score. He's not going to do that. And something you should respect him for. But Chris Rodriguez is going to get my 3rd star for this episode. Certainly some other options as well. If you want to vote, there is a poll up on the YouTube communities tab on the Locked On Commanders podcast YouTube page. So go in there and vote. Insiders have already asked you for your votes in our text message threads, so you can do that. But those are our 3 stars of the game: Terry McLaurin, Dante Fowler Jr., and Chris Rodriguez Jr. And that's going to wrap up this Victory Monday episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks for coming through. We got Dan Quinn tomorrow via Zoom at 3:30 p.m. I will be out in Ashburn to help Chick Hernandez with his exclusive one-on-one conversation for WSA 9 with Dan Quinn as well. And then we will have an episode dropping Tuesday morning Victory Tuesday episode of Locked On Commanders. Until then, if you got comments, you got questions, all you got to do is text me. To do that, you can go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Become an insider today. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL. Get your madman dose of NFL espresso with Tyler Rowland in the morning, and then come through in the afternoon for the barbershop vibe with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. And until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind. Everydayers, I love you. I didn't forget about you. I love you for coming through every single day. I will speak to you all next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.